It's the 28th of February 2025, and what we're thinking about is something which happened 50 years ago, which is just amazing. And it's a particular squat in London, St Agnes Place, Kennington, I believe.
By the park.
So it'll be West London?
South London.
South London, but south of the river. I'm here, John Simpson, doing the interviewing, and James Peatling, the subject of this interview, because in fact, James, you were a squatter there.
Yes.
What period of time were you doing the squatting?
I moved into 1 Willow Close, Thornton Heath in September 74.
Yeah.
And with my friend John, and he did his first year at university up until summer 76, and wanted a nearer place than Croydon to live to get into central London. So he borrowed my tandem for an afternoon and came back very soon actually. It took him about 3 hours and said, I found somewhere new, and I think I drove his fridge to the new address, which was 79 St Agnes Place.
Yes, yes.
Which had been squatted since about 1969.
Yes.
And remained until 2005.
Yes.
And possibly some of it's still there.
John went first and then he said, oh, there's a room for you. A room or room?
He had the large living room on the first floor.
Yeah.
The houses were truly magnificent. They were built late Georgian or early Victorian for Buckingham Palace servants.
Wow.
And possibly Prince Albert's model cottage, which is in Kennington Park, only 100 yards away, was put in the parks because people they knew lived near it. The road next to St Agnes Place is called Cook's Row. How
far from Buckingham Palace was it then?
Kennington's, I suppose, 2 miles from the river, so maybe 3-4 miles back.
Oh, so they want to keep the riffraff well away from the palace then. It's quite a long way though, isn't it, for servants to live that far away?
It is a long way.
Yeah.
And it was a magnificent row of houses. If I lived in 79 and we weren't the end, there must have been 100.
Were they, what, 3-storey houses?
Yes. Basement, steps up to the ground floor.
Yeah.
First floor and second.
And an attic room or not?
Never got that far. Very interestingly, on the second floor at the top of the staircase was a kitchen, a cooker and sink, designed, I think, in the 50s for the first influx of West Indians to live in rooms and share communal kitchen on the staircase. Was soon banned because putting a fire in a chimney is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
I've never seen one before or since.
No. And the council, well, the whole area was designated for redevelopment, and the council decided to condemn these houses, although they were perfectly all right. And I'm reading information about it. They did things like filling the toilets up with concrete to stop people squatting there, and so they would taking sewage, taking the water systems out, and then the squatters sort of reconnected a lot of this stuff up, because a lot of the squatters were, as you say, graduates and clever people, weren't they?
Was a complete range. The Rastafarian community were second generation refugees of the West Indian culture. The rest were white 20-year-olds in the main. And yes, everybody in our house was students.
Yes.
I didn't really know them.
Or ex-students.
They were friends of John. The people who'd been there previously, from 69, 70 onwards, were by then 40.
Yes. What the ones who started in 69? 69.
Yeah.
So they've been there for
7 years.
7 years. They're well established.
Sid Rawle opened the first squat in London in 68.
And was there a connection between all the different squats in London?
Not really. We were very isolated in Croydon. Villa Road was famous in Brixton, and they tried to have political influence, and I believe they had their own newspaper. We had none of it. We were starving 19-year-olds trying to survive.
Ah, right. So Villa Road squat was quite established, and the political ones, they were the head squat. I did read about Villa Road.
Again, a lovely row of terraced, very expensive properties, neglected from the early 60s onwards.
Yeah, crazy, really, wasn't it? Yeah. So you were there from May, did you say, to August?
Yeah.
So not a very long time, but enough to get a taste of it, and you enjoyed it, sort of being there. That was.
Well, it just was utterly remarkable because John got the gas lights in the wall working of the living room, and we put 10p in the meter, and we never made that mistake again. I would come home in the evening to yellow glow in the first floor front room, which we had, which was like 20 by 14. Twin sash windows, just very nice. And of course, within a week of moving in, Bob Marley and the Wailers came and stayed.
Wow.
So,
and were they famous at this time or not?
Yes, we'd listened to the Zippo album from 72, I think, 73, Catch a Fire, and we knew exactly who they were. They came back to England in 76. And I think they'd played Hammersmith Odeon in 75 as well. So I never considered them as anything other than a foreign band visiting.
Yeah.
You know, they were there.
So they were actually foreign. They weren't actually from Jamaica at that time, were they?
Yeah,
they were from Jamaica.
They were.
So it was like a hotel for them, that really. Where can we stay, or go down the St Agnes Place Squat?
Yeah, where the Rastafarian culture was. So they wanted to play football in the road. They came and knocked on the door and asked me to move my Austin Cambridge.
Yeah.
I went, fine. A few days later they did it again, and after that I always parked 50 yards back behind the lamppost so that they didn't have to ask.
Yes.
You know, it was a very comfortable atmosphere, and I didn't realise at the time, but I think I was talking to Bunny Whaler, and he spoke English rather than Jamaican patois.
Right.
There was no kind of difficulty in conversation.
No.
And they were incredibly cooperative and civil. I don't think they would have treated white people in Trenchtown like it. It would have been far more antagonistic.
Yeah, possibly so. I'm not sure.
I was 21. What did I know?
Yeah.
I was just.
I think
there.
Jamaicans, the West Indians are very friendly people, aren't they?
Yes, I mean I've not lived. I lived near Brixton for a long time, but I was separate to the culture.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
It was a different way of life.
So I get the feeling that you were actually quite excited by your time there. Really, it was a lot of action. Must have been very fresh, very didn't know what the possibilities were, or what you might find or anything. And a lot of looking in skips and that sort of thing, wasn't there, going on, and getting wood from skips and finding what you could do the house up with and all that sort of thing.
It didn't need it. We spent a lot of time initially sorting out the house in Croydon. It had been abandoned for 3 years.
Yeah.
But this, although it was completely empty, I found bunting from VE Day
Wow.
in the fireplace, and I have a flag that says "God Save the King."
Cool. You've still got all that?
I've got that, yes.
Somewhere.
Yep, somewhere. Something happened every few days.
Yes.
As I say, I went to see the Stones twice at the end of May, and the Who.
Wow.
John came and borrowed a tandem to go and find somewhere to live.
Yeah.
Turned up with this place in Kennington. I had my car.
So were you working at the time or not?
I think I'd just left Lacey Hulbert's, who were an engineering factory,
Yes.
which paid for me to have the car.
I see.
My Morris van had died at the beginning of '75.
Oh, yeah.
So now, 18 months later, I'd got my next car going.
Yeah. And did you ferry people around much? You know, did you do favours for people and that sort of thing?
Life was a constant party of, if anybody wanted to go anywhere, we did anything that was required.
Yes.
Nobody asked.
And
Really?
quite a few of the people were working there then, were they? Who were working had proper paid jobs, who were living in the squat?
No, everybody in my house was a student,
Yes.
and the guy next door, we used to look out the window into the garden, he had a yard ball of stone that he'd turned into a frog.
Huh.
So he was an artist.
Oh, right.
And there was I think it was fiberglass head of Tutankhamun that was kind of 3 foot tall on a wall. There was just chaos happening the whole time, but it was great,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I think people signed on. I don't think many were working
No,
then.
no. Somehow in those days you could be signed on to not a fictitious address, but it was almost fictitious. The postman actually came down the street, did they?
I never saw one. And no, in those days, and probably still today, you could have Thursday afternoon collect your gyro.
Oh, you collect it at the...
Collect it at the Labour Exchange.
Right. And that's what people did.
If they didn't trust their address.
And if they weren't students.
In
obviously.
Willow Close, I had my gyro posted to me. The rate then was about £7 a week, whereas having worked at the engineering works, I was earning about 30.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
yeah, but if you didn't have rent to pay, it wouldn't matter too much, would it? You know, you know, you'd be saving quite a lot anyway. £7, £7 a week that was it?
on £7 a week, I was keeping Steve, who was educationally subnormal man, who lived with us, and he bankrupted me, but I paid whatever it took to keep both of us alive.
Yes.
We didn't do well, but we ended up with tea and toast on Wednesdays.
Yeah. Oh right. Oh right. Now looking back on it, now I mean to me, I don't know what the law on squatting is now, but I should imagine everything's been tightened up. And looking back on it now, it's just so amazing the difference in culture. I mean, what we're thinking about is Thatcher, miners' strike, car factories always going on strike, strikes all over the place all the time, hyperinflation, just a different world. But then you look back on it and you think there were all this population of students and people, you know, actually squatting, and it was sort of like almost a recognised thing.
All the bands of the time came from squats. The Clash were living in 101 some road, I can't remember the name, and they were called the 101ers before they became the Clash.
Yeah.
Sid Vicious was living with Lemmy in his squat.
Yeah.
And he said to Lemmy, "I've joined the Pistols." And Lemmy said, "As a roadie?" And he went, "No, I'm the bass player." You know, Boy George was living in a squat. They were all in North London.
So, I mean, we're sitting here in middle class Wimborne. You know, I mean, in many respects, we're highly respectable people now. Well, I'm not saying you weren't respectable when you were in the squat, but the situation, I mean, what just gets me is how different the world is now. Perhaps it's just because we are living in the south of England, very nice area, but I get the feeling that London's not quite the same as it was, is it?
We were fairly well looked down on by the population at large. We had long hair. We walked around in loons. And there was an old white working class culture that despised us.
Oh, right. Yes.
Was probably envious. A councillor described St Agnes Place as being something about council tax avoidance or poll tax avoidance.
Oh, poll tax riots as well. Of course, that came on a bit later.
Well, that was a lot later.
Yes.
But generally, the law changed in February '75. Before then, squatters were occupiers, and the electricity and water had to be provided if you paid the bill.
Yes.
After February '75, they were described as trespassers.
Yes.
And the electricity board didn't have to pay, didn't have to provide.
No.
So they stopped providing. So it became more difficult. St Agnes Place had electricity as far as I was aware. We had a record player that was sort of on constantly.
Yeah.
We had a fridge, so that worked.
Yes.
And we had the gas lighting, which was just remarkable.
Yes.
I'm surprised we didn't blow ourselves up. Must have been 100 years old.
Wow.
You know, must have been.
So you were actually there only really within the summer months anyway, weren't you? So you didn't really experience the winter.
No, it was a very hot summer, 76.
Yeah. Oh, of course it was.
75 had been hot, and 76 was famous.
Well, yeah, that was the hottest one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I drove John to Belgium for a fortnight. A girl he knew at the college wanted to see museums in Europe.
Yeah.
And John went to visit a friend in Tehran who was working on a newspaper just before the Shah was deposed.
So why did you finish it then? Why did you leave in August?
The Rastafarians broke in and stole John's goods. So he didn't want to live there anymore.
Oh dear.
And I'd lost the car on the bank holiday Monday.
Lost it?
A friend wrote it off.
Oh.
And the friend who was working on a newspaper in Tehran was back at that time. And so I was back stuck in Croydon, and beginning of September, John turned up and stayed for a couple of weeks, and then went and got a flat in Catford. So we were very isolated. No one came there unless they were visiting or lived there or knew about it.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly how you like it.
Yeah.
And we were the same in Croydon. We were in a dead-end cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Off London Road. Most squats, you know, wanted to be left alone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you got bad publicity in the press, and people came to attack you and complain.
Yes.
That you were getting something for nothing.
So the Rastafarians at the end they broke into your house then?
Yeah, John had wedding rings of his grandmother's and other stuff. He didn't talk about it at the time. He just came back to Croydon and stayed with me. And I drove back to the St Agnes Place to collect the fridge with a friend in a van. And it was 9 o'clock at night, so it was dark. The policeman stopped my friend in the van and said, "It's illegal to load a van in the dark." Well, we didn't know.
I didn't know that either.
Charlie and Margaret, who had the fridge, were furious. They had half a pint of milk and a beef burger in it. And John went and found someone else with a fridge for them to use.
Yeah.
Margaret jumped in front of a row of derelict houses that were being demolished with a wrecking ball in front of the BBC news cameras and was on the 6 o'clock news.
Huh.
That was maybe a few months later.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting in relation to this interview and this little film is that it all started with the fridge and it ended with the fridge.
Tony's brother gave me the sink that we had in Croydon. Everybody helped everybody.
Yeah.
There was no issue with it. There was fun to be had and an adventure going on.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think we'll wind it up there.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thanks.